The sun was slowly dipping behind the distant hills, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. The ranch, surrounded by wide-open fields and clusters of mesquite trees, was quiet except for the soft sound of cattle lowing in the pens and the occasional call of a distant hawk. The rancher, a man in his mid-40s with strong hands and a weathered face, moved through the yard methodically, finishing the last of his evening chores. He had lived on this land for most of his life, and the routine of caring for his animals, repairing fences, and tending to the small vegetable garden gave him both purpose and peace. That evening, as he carried a bucket of water to the horse trough, he noticed a figure walking along the dusty road that ran past the edge of his property. At first, he thought it might be a traveler passing by, perhaps someone heading to the next town. But as the figure drew closer, he realized it was a young woman. Her hair, dark and long, glinted softly in the fading sunlight, and her clothes, while simple, were neat and well kept. She walked with a quiet dignity, though her steps carried a weight of fatigue. Her eyes, dark and observant, scanned the land as if searching for something or someone. The rancher paused for a moment, instinctively reaching out to greet her. "Evening," he called, keeping his voice calm and welcoming. "You seem a long way from anywhere. Are you all right?" The woman looked at him, her expression guarded but not unfriendly. She hesitated for a brief moment, then nodded slowly. I am fine," she said softly. "I've been traveling. It's been a long day." Her voice was melodic, gentle, yet carried a hint of weariness. The rancher's heart softened. He had learned long ago that the land could be lonely and sometimes harsh, and kindness often went a long way. Without overthinking, he offered, "If you need a place to rest for the night, my home is nearby. You're welcome to stay." The woman's eyes widened slightly in surprise. She seemed to consider his offer carefully, glancing toward the road behind her as if uncertain. Finally, she nodded again. "Thank you," she said. "That is very kind of you." Guiding her along the yard path, the rancher made sure she felt comfortable. Though he didn't often have guests, he knew how to prepare a simple meal and a warm place to sleep. He showed her into the small guest room, a modest space with a bed, a small dresser, and a window that looked out over the rolling plains. "You can rest here tonight," he said. "I'll prepare some food in a moment. Just make yourself comfortable." The woman smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and gratitude, and settled onto the edge of the bed, letting out a soft sigh. As the rancher went into the kitchen to prepare the evening meal, he thought about the unexpected visit. It wasn't often that anyone passed by his ranch, and even less common that a lone traveler appeared so late in the day. Yet, something about this woman felt different, calm, patient, and respectful. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt a sense of trust. Perhaps it was the quiet way she carried herself, or maybe the exhaustion in her movements that spoke of a long journey. Either way, he resolved to help her as best he could. The kitchen smelled faintly of fresh bread he had baked earlier in the day and the lingering aroma of herbs from the garden. He set a plate of simple food on the table, roasted vegetables, a slice of bread, and some cheese. Pouring a small cup of water for her, he carried it to the guest room. The woman accepted it with a quiet nod. "Thank you," she said again. There was sincerity in her tone that made the rancher feel even more certain he had done the right thing. They shared the meal in a companionable silence, broken only by the occasional sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside. The rancher asked gentle questions about her journey, careful not to pry too much. She spoke of traveling through the plains and forests, of staying with friendly people along the way, and of the challenges she had faced. She spoke honestly, yet not revealing everything, and the rancher respected that. There was an air of mystery about her, but it was not threatening, only intriguing. After the meal, he offered her a warm place by the fireplace. The flames danced, casting shadows that flickered across the walls. The woman settled near the fire, wrapping herself in a light blanket he had provided. She looked at the rancher, a quiet curiosity in her eyes. "You live a long way from anywhere," she said softly. "It must be lonely sometimes." The rancher chuckled lightly. "It can be," he admitted, "but I like it that way. The land teaches you patience and helps you see things you might miss in the city." He paused, then added, "And sometimes it brings unexpected company." He smiled faintly, thinking of how true that was in this moment. As night deepened, the stars appeared in the clear sky, shining brighter than they ever did in towns with streetlights. The rancher and the woman spoke a little more about life, about the land, and about the quiet beauty of simple living. The woman's stories, though brief, were full of hints of adventures and experiences that fascinated him. She spoke of mountains and rivers, of animals she had seen, and people she had met. Though he listened quietly, he could sense a life rich with experience, even if it had been difficult at times. Eventually, it was time for rest. The woman thanked him again, a small smile lighting her face, and lay down on the bed. The rancher made sure the door was securely closed and the animals were safe for the night. As he stepped outside to check the night sky, he felt a sense of contentment. It was a quiet night, and yet something about the evening felt special. A night that began with an unexpected visitor had turned into something more meaningful than he could have anticipated. He returned to his own room, reflecting on the day and the woman who had come to his door. There was a lesson here, he realized. Sometimes, kindness costs little but can mean everything to someone in need. He drifted off to sleep with a feeling of calm, unaware that the night held more surprises than he could ever imagine, and that this encounter would be the beginning of a story far bigger than a single evening on the ranch. The rancher woke early the next morning, the soft light of dawn streaming through the windows and painting the room in gentle gold. The world outside was quiet, except for the occasional chirping of birds and the faint rustle of the wind through the trees. He dressed quickly, deciding to check on his animals before breakfast. As he moved through the pens, he thought about the woman who had arrived the night before. There was something unusual about her, something quiet but strong in her presence. Though she had spoken little about her journey, he sensed a depth of experience in her that made him curious. When he returned to the house, he found her sitting at the small kitchen table, looking out the window at the morning landscape. She smiled softly when she saw him. "Good morning," she said. Her voice had a calm steadiness, and he could tell she had slept well. "Good morning," he replied. "Did you rest all right?" She nodded. "Yes. Thank you. Your home is very peaceful." He prepared a simple breakfast of eggs, bread, and fresh fruit from his garden. While the food cooked, they spoke quietly about the day ahead. The woman told him she planned to continue her journey, heading toward a nearby town to meet some friends who had been expecting her. He listened carefully, noting the determination in her tone. There was a sense of purpose in the way she spoke, as if every step she took was deliberate and meaningful. As breakfast was served, the rancher noticed a small bag she had brought with her. It was neatly packed, with only a few essential items. She explained that she traveled light because it made moving easier, and he admired her practicality. They ate together in a companionable silence, occasionally exchanging small talk about the weather, the ranch, and the animals. It was a simple morning, yet it felt significant, as if the quiet moments held a deeper meaning that neither of them fully understood. After breakfast, the rancher went outside to finish a few chores, leaving the woman to gather her belongings. As he mended a fence, he glanced up and saw her carefully arranging her small bag, making sure nothing was left behind. She moved with care and attention, as if she valued every item she carried. The rancher respected this about her. It spoke of someone who appreciated the small things in life and understood their importance. Just as he was finishing up, he heard the sound of soft voices approaching from the road. At first, he thought it might be another traveler, or perhaps a neighbor passing by. But as the voices grew closer, he realized there were more than one, and the tones were familiar in a way he couldn't place immediately. He straightened up and wiped his hands on his worn trousers, ready to greet whoever it was. To his surprise, 3 more women appeared, walking calmly toward the ranch house. Their expressions were polite but confident, and they carried small bundles with them. The rancher felt a moment of shock. He had only expected the first woman to stay for the night. Yet here were three more, approaching quietly, as if they had been invited. He took a deep breath and reminded himself that he had offered kindness, without expecting anything in return. With that thought, he stepped forward and greeted them. "Good morning," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Can I help you?" The women stopped a few steps away, smiling politely. One of them spoke softly, her words carrying the same calm authority as the first woman. "We have been traveling with our friend," she said, nodding toward the woman from the night before. "She told us there was a safe place to rest here. We hope it is all right for us to stay a little while." The rancher felt a mixture of surprise and curiosity. He had expected only one guest. Yet now, there were three more, each carrying the quiet dignity and presence of someone who had traveled far. He hesitated for a brief moment, considering the situation, but then he remembered his own words from the night before that anyone in need would be welcome here. With a small smile, he nodded. "Of course," he said. "Come in. There's plenty of room, and I'll make sure you are comfortable." The women thanked him softly and followed him toward the house. Inside, the first woman from the night before looked pleased, her eyes bright with gratitude. She greeted her companions warmly, and the rancher watched as they settled in, arranging their small belongings and finding seats near the fireplace. The atmosphere in the room changed immediately. What had been a quiet, solitary space now felt lively, filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the warmth of companionship. The rancher offered them food, preparing extra bread, cheese, and fruit from his kitchen. They accepted graciously, and soon they were sitting together, sharing a simple breakfast. As they ate, he noticed that each woman had her own story, reflected in her expression, the strength of someone who had faced challenges, the calm of someone who had learned patience, and the quiet joy of someone who appreciated small kindnesses. Though they had only met hours ago, there was a sense of connection forming, a mutual respect that grew naturally between host and guests. After breakfast, they began to speak more freely. The first woman told a few stories about their travels, carefully choosing words that were honest but respectful. She spoke of the long walks across plains and forests, of rivers crossed and mountains climbed, and of the people they had met along the way. The rancher listened intently, fascinated by the glimpses of a life so different from his own. There was a rhythm to her storytelling, a gentle unfolding that made him feel as though he were walking alongside them on their journey. The other three women shared pieces of their own experiences as well. One spoke of her family and the lessons she had learned from her elders. Another described the small villages they had passed through, the kindness of strangers, and the challenges they had faced in finding safe places to rest. The third spoke quietly, choosing her words carefully, about her dreams for the future and the hope that had kept them moving forward. The rancher was struck by how much courage and resilience these women possessed, and he felt a deep respect for each of them. As the morning turned into afternoon, the women helped around the ranch in small ways. They fed some of the animals, swept the floors, and even gathered herbs from the garden for the rancher to use later. Though they were guests, they did not impose. Instead, they contributed quietly, sharing their energy and presence with kindness and humility. The rancher observed them with growing admiration, realizing that the night's surprise had become an unexpected blessing. Throughout the day, conversation flowed naturally. The women asked questions about the ranch, the animals, and the land. The rancher answered honestly, explaining his routines, his work, and the small joys of life in the open plains. In return, they shared stories of their culture, traditions, and the lessons they had learned along the way. The exchange was gentle and enriching, each person offering something valuable to the other. By the time the sun began its descent in the sky, the rancher felt as though his home had been transformed. What had started as a simple act of hospitality had become a meaningful exchange of stories, knowledge, and mutual respect. As evening approached, the rancher prepared another meal for the group. The women helped set the table, and even shared some small recipes from their travels. The kitchen was filled with laughter and the warm aroma of food, and the rancher realized that this night would be remembered not just for the surprise of unexpected guests, but for the bonds that had begun to form. Each woman brought a sense of warmth, resilience, and gratitude that made the ranch feel alive in a new way. Before settling in for the night, the rancher took a moment to reflect on the day. He realized that kindness, even when extended without expectation, had a way of multiplying. One simple offer to help a weary traveler had led to connections, stories, and lessons that he would carry with him forever. Though the night had begun with surprise and uncertainty, it ended with gratitude, understanding, and the quiet joy of human connection. As he prepared the rooms for the night, making sure each woman had a comfortable place to rest, he felt a sense of peace. He knew that this encounter, though unexpected, had changed him in small but meaningful ways. The ranch was no longer just a place of work and solitude. It had become a place of shared stories, laughter, and the gentle understanding that sometimes life brings more than we ask for, and that is often a gift. The women settled in near the fireplace, sharing quiet conversation and smiles, while the rancher checked the animals one last time. Outside, the stars began to twinkle in the clear sky, and a gentle wind whispered through the trees. It was a night of calm and warmth, a night where surprise became connection, and where the simple act of welcoming a stranger had grown into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The next morning, the rancher woke to the soft light of dawn spilling across the wide fields, the cool air carrying the faint scent of earth and grass. The ranch was quiet, but the presence of the four women made it feel alive in a way that he hadn't experienced in years. He moved through the house slowly, careful not to disturb them. Yet he found it difficult to ignore the sense of curiosity and excitement that lingered in the air. The women were already awake, moving quietly in the kitchen, preparing for the day with calm efficiency. They had taken to the routines of the ranch naturally, helping where they could without being asked. And their presence now felt less like an intrusion and more like the natural flow of life on the property. The first woman, the one who had arrived the night before, noticed him and smiled softly. "Good morning," she said in her gentle voice, one that carried both warmth and assurance. "Did you sleep well?" The rancher nodded. "Yes, thank you. And you?" She laughed lightly. "Better than I expected," she replied, glancing toward her companions, who were quietly arranging their small belongings and assisting in preparing breakfast. As the morning progressed, the rancher realized that he had underestimated the energy and organization of the women. They moved through the kitchen and yard with purpose, talking softly among themselves and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. One woman gathered eggs from the chicken coop, another swept the floor, and the third tended to the garden. Their coordinated movements spoke of experience, teamwork, and a deep understanding of how to manage both people and tasks efficiently. The rancher watched in quiet admiration, noticing how naturally they adapted to the routines of his life, without disruption. Over breakfast, conversation flowed easily. The women shared more stories of their journey, and the rancher listened with growing interest. One spoke of the distant mountains they had crossed the previous week, describing the beauty of the sunrise over jagged peaks and the way the wind whispered through the trees. Another told of a small village where a kind family had offered them shelter, sharing food and laughter despite not knowing them well. Each story revealed both the hardships they had faced and the small acts of kindness that had made their journey bearable. The rancher found himself drawn to the stories, fascinated by the experiences these women had lived. There was an elegance in the way they spoke, a quiet dignity that conveyed strength without pride. He realized that their journey had not only tested their endurance but had also shaped their character in ways that words could barely capture. It was humbling to witness, and he felt a deep respect growing for each of them, as though he were seeing life through a perspective entirely new to him. After breakfast, the women helped the rancher with chores. They carried water to the animals, cleaned the pens, and even assisted with feeding the cattle. Though the rancher had initially worried about the unexpected presence of guests, he now found their help invaluable. It was clear that their presence was not a burden but a gift, a way for them to contribute and participate in the rhythm of daily life. The rancher felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of connection he had not realized he had been missing. As the morning sun rose higher, the women gathered near the porch, speaking quietly among themselves. The rancher, curious, approached them cautiously. "Is everything all right?" he asked. One of the women turned to him, her eyes calm and thoughtful. "Yes," she said. "We were discussing the path ahead. Our journey continues, but we wanted to learn more about your land and your life here. There is much we can appreciate and learn." Her words were measured, respectful, yet carried a quiet confidence. The rancher nodded, realizing that their visit was more than a simple stop. It was an exchange of understanding and knowledge, a moment to share life lessons across worlds he had not previously known. During the late morning, the rancher decided to take a short walk with the women through the fields. The land stretched endlessly, dotted with trees and small wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. The women moved gracefully, pointing out plants and animals, sharing insights about their uses and meanings. One woman showed him a wild herb she had used in her travels, explaining its medicinal properties and the careful way it should be harvested. Another spoke of the birds they had observed on their journey, noting their behaviors and songs with surprising precision. The rancher listened, fascinated by their knowledge and the way they saw the world. As they walked, the women shared more personal stories. The rancher learned about their families, the lessons taught by elders, and the values they held dear. There was no boasting or unnecessary detail, only a sincere and thoughtful sharing of experiences. He realized that each woman carried a piece of wisdom, not just from her own life, but from the lives of those who had guided her. The rancher felt privileged to be part of this conversation, as if the land itself had conspired to bring these stories to him. By midday, the rancher returned to the house, and the women helped prepare a light meal. They worked together with quiet efficiency, chopping vegetables, arranging food on plates, and setting the table. The kitchen, once quiet and solitary, now hummed with life and activity. The rancher marveled at how seamlessly they had adapted to his routines while still maintaining their own identities and customs. It was a balance he had not expected, a harmony that made the ranch feel complete in a way he had never known. After lunch, they settled near the fireplace in the main room. The women shared stories of traditions, songs, and rituals from their lives. The rancher listened intently, captivated by the way their words painted vivid pictures of distant places, of ceremonies and celebrations, and of quiet moments of reflection. He asked questions carefully, wanting to understand without intruding. And they answered thoughtfully, revealing small details that made him feel closer to them with each passing moment. As the afternoon stretched on, the rancher noticed something remarkable. Despite having only met the women recently, there was a sense of trust and comfort that had developed. They laughed together at small jokes, exchanged glances that spoke of mutual understanding, and moved around the space as if they had been part of the household for months rather than hours. The rancher realized that true connection could develop quickly when people approached each other with respect, kindness, and openness. The quiet of the early evening approached, and the rancher prepared another meal for his guests. The women helped set the table and contributed small touches, folding napkins neatly, arranging flowers from the garden, and offering suggestions for seasoning the food. The rancher observed these gestures with appreciation. Their presence was no longer a surprise or a challenge. It was a natural part of his life, a reminder that the world was larger and richer than the boundaries of his daily routine might suggest. After dinner, the group gathered near the fireplace once more. The women spoke softly of their hopes and dreams, of the places they wished to see, and the lessons they wanted to carry with them. The rancher shared some of his own experiences, though he found that their stories held more vibrancy and depth than his own daily life had offered. Yet he realized that sharing these small details created a bond, a bridge between different experiences and worlds. As night fell, the rancher checked the animals one last time, ensuring everything was secure. The women had settled into their rooms, speaking quietly and moving carefully to avoid disturbing the peaceful atmosphere. The rancher walked to the porch, looking out at the wide expanse of land under the starry sky. He reflected on the day, realizing that what had begun as a simple act of kindness had grown into a meaningful exchange of stories, labor, and human connection. The unexpected guests had brought more than companionship. They had brought perspective, knowledge, and a sense of shared humanity that the rancher had not anticipated. He felt gratitude for their presence, and for the lessons they had shared without even realizing it. He understood that life often presents surprises, and that true generosity sometimes involves embracing them fully, without hesitation or judgment. Finally, the rancher returned to his room, feeling a sense of peace and fulfillment. The day had been long, yet it had passed with moments of laughter, learning, and quiet reflection. He knew that the presence of these 4 women had transformed not only his home, but also his perspective. As he drifted to sleep, he felt anticipation for what the next day might bring, aware that the journey of connection, understanding, and friendship was only beginning. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the windows of the ranch house, illuminating the wooden floors and the small kitchen where the aroma of fresh bread and herbs already filled the air. The rancher woke early, as was his habit, and quietly moved about the house. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, bathed in golden light. Today, however, the ranch felt different. The presence of the 4 women, who had now become more than mere guests, had changed the atmosphere. There was a sense of shared life, of gentle energy, and quiet companionship that had settled into the house like a comforting blanket. The women were already awake, moving quietly through the kitchen and common areas. The first woman, the one who had arrived alone, smiled warmly as she noticed him. "Good morning," she said softly. Her voice carried calm and confidence, yet there was a warmth in it that made the morning feel brighter. The rancher smiled in return. "Good morning. You all slept well?" They nodded, their expressions reflecting both gratitude and contentment. It was clear that the night's rest had rejuvenated them, and they were ready to face the day. Breakfast was a quiet, pleasant affair. The rancher had prepared eggs, bread, and fresh fruit, while the women contributed small touches, arranging plates, pouring water, and even sharing a few herbs and spices they had brought with them. As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally, touching on small joys and simple observations about the world around them. One woman spoke about the early morning birds she had observed, describing their songs in a way that made the rancher pause and listen more closely than he ever had before. Another told a story of a distant river where the sunlight shimmered like silver, and the gentle current carried both fish and fallen leaves downstream in perfect rhythm. After breakfast, the women gathered near the porch, while the rancher prepared to check on the animals. "We would like to learn more about the land here," said one of them softly, looking toward the wide fields. "You care for it with patience and respect, and we would like to understand it better." The rancher felt a deep appreciation for their curiosity. It was rare that guests not only accepted his hospitality, but also approached his way of life with interest and reverence. He smiled and nodded. "I'd be happy to show you. There is much to know, even in simple things." Together, they walked across the ranch, observing the cattle grazing quietly in the fields, the chickens pecking along the yard, and the small garden that had grown through the seasons with careful attention. The rancher spoke about the routines he followed, the importance of water management, and the ways he ensured the animals were healthy and safe. The women asked questions respectfully, their interest genuine. One asked about the planting patterns in the garden, while another inquired about the care of the horses and the work required to maintain the pastures. Each question revealed their thoughtfulness and a desire to learn, not to judge. As the morning passed, the rancher noticed how naturally they adapted to his environment. They moved with care, aware of their surroundings, and each gesture was measured and deliberate. They spoke quietly, sometimes in short bursts of laughter, sometimes in reflective silence. Yet even in moments of quiet, there was a presence that filled the ranch with warmth. The rancher realized that these women had a way of observing and appreciating life that made even the simplest tasks seem meaningful. By midday, they returned to the house for a light meal. The women helped prepare the food, chopping vegetables, arranging bread, and setting the table. They worked in harmony, their movements synchronized as if they had done this together many times before, though in reality, they had only known each other for a brief period. The rancher watched in quiet admiration, noticing the gentle respect they showed for one another, and for him. It was a reminder of how much grace and care could be present in the world when people approached life thoughtfully. After lunch, the women settled in the common room, while the rancher attended to a few remaining chores outside. When he returned, he found them engaged in quiet conversation, sharing pieces of their personal histories with one another and with him. The rancher listened attentively as one woman spoke about her family, describing the lessons taught by elders and the values that had guided her through life. Another shared the story of a small village where she had learned the importance of community and cooperation. The third spoke softly of challenges she had faced and the resilience she had developed through them. The rancher was struck by the depth and wisdom that each of them carried, and he felt a quiet admiration for their strength. As the afternoon moved toward evening, the rancher decided to take a short walk with the women around the outer fields of the ranch. The land stretched wide, with gentle hills and clusters of wildflowers swaying in the breeze. Birds called softly in the distance, and the sun cast long shadows across the landscape. The women moved gracefully through the fields, pointing out plants and small details that the rancher had never noticed. One showed him a wild herb she had used in her travels, explaining its properties and uses. Another spoke of the behavior of certain birds and animals, sharing insights that reflected both observation and experience. The rancher found himself learning alongside them, realizing that their presence was as enriching to him as his hospitality was to them. During the walk, they spoke of life, not in generalities, but in personal, meaningful ways. The women shared lessons they had learned through their journeys: patience, adaptability, and the importance of compassion. They spoke of small moments of joy that had carried them through difficulties and of acts of kindness they had witnessed that restored their faith in humanity. The rancher, in turn, shared his experiences, the quiet lessons of the land, and the satisfaction of a life lived close to nature. The conversation was gentle and reflective, weaving together stories, observations, and wisdom. As evening approached, the women helped prepare the house for the night. They moved quietly, setting small touches in place, arranging the kitchen, and making sure the rooms were comfortable. The rancher marveled at how naturally they had become part of his daily life, not as intruders, but as companions and participants. He felt a growing sense of connection and gratitude, realizing that this unexpected gathering had brought richness to his life in ways he had not anticipated. After dinner, the women gathered near the fireplace. The flames cast soft light across the room, and the air was filled with warmth, both physical and emotional. They shared quiet conversation about their hopes and dreams, their journey ahead, and the people they hoped to meet along the way. The rancher listened attentively, captivated by the depth of thought and feeling in their words. There was a quiet humility in their manner, a recognition that life was full of challenges but also full of beauty and opportunity. As night fell, the rancher walked outside once more to check on the animals. The stars twinkled brightly above, and the cool night air carried the scent of the earth. He reflected on the day, realizing that what had started as a simple act of kindness, offering shelter to a weary traveler, had become a lesson in human connection, understanding, and gratitude. The women had brought not only their presence but also their stories, wisdom, and warmth, transforming the ranch into a place of shared life and learning. When he returned to the house, the women were preparing to rest, speaking softly among themselves. The rancher took a moment to watch them, noticing the gentle laughter, the small gestures of care, and the quiet attentiveness to one another. He realized that their time at the ranch had created bonds that went beyond mere hospitality. There was trust, mutual respect, and a shared sense of humanity that would remain long after their journey continued. Finally, the rancher retired to his own room. He felt a deep sense of peace, aware that the day had been full of learning, reflection, and connection. The women's presence had reminded him that life often brings unexpected surprises, and that these surprises, when embraced with openness and kindness, can transform ordinary moments into experiences of meaning and joy. As he drifted off to sleep, he knew that the night ahead would be calm, yet full of the quiet promise of continued friendship and shared discovery. The morning air on the ranch was crisp and filled with the quiet sounds of life stirring. Birds called from the trees, The faint rustle of the wind moved through the fields, and the cattle grazed peacefully. The rancher awoke with a sense of anticipation, knowing that this day would be different. The four women who had been his unexpected guests were preparing to continue their journey. Though he had grown accustomed to their presence over the past few days, the thought of their departure brought a mixture of pride, sadness, and gratitude. He dressed quickly and moved to the kitchen, where the women were already gathering their belongings. Their movements were calm and deliberate, each action purposeful and careful. They had left the rooms clean and tidy, showing respect not only for his home, but for the effort he had put into maintaining it. The first woman, the one who had arrived alone, looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning," she said softly. "We are ready to leave soon." Her eyes reflected a quiet appreciation for the hospitality she had received, and the rancher felt a warmth in his chest. Breakfast was a simple affair, yet it carried a weight of meaning. The women helped prepare the food, arranging it neatly on the table, while the rancher made sure to include some items for them to take along: bread, fresh fruit, and small parcels of herbs from the garden. They ate together in silence for a few moments, savoring the morning and the final shared meal. The rancher noticed small gestures of care: a plate placed gently in front of another, a smile shared across the table, a kind word offered quietly. These moments, though simple, conveyed gratitude, respect, and connection. After breakfast, the rancher and the women stepped outside. The sun had risen fully now, casting golden light over the fields and hills. The women adjusted their small bags and looked toward the road that would take them to the next part of their journey. Before setting off, they turned to the rancher, their expressions sincere and thoughtful. One of them spoke first, her voice calm and steady. "We cannot thank you enough for your kindness. Your home and your care have given us more than shelter. You have given us trust and understanding, and that is something we will carry with us always." The rancher felt a lump in his throat, moved by the words. He had never expected anything in return for his hospitality, yet hearing their gratitude so openly was deeply touching. "It was my pleasure," he replied, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt. "I am glad to have shared these days with you. You have brought warmth and life into this home, and I am grateful for that." The women nodded, smiling softly, their eyes reflecting a mutual respect that went beyond words. Before they departed, the women each handed him a small token of appreciation. One gave a woven bracelet, crafted carefully with threads of bright color. Another offered a small bundle of herbs tied with a ribbon, representing both health and good fortune. The third presented a carved wooden figure, simple yet full of meaning. And the first woman placed a small pouch containing seeds from a distant region, symbolizing growth and continuity. The rancher accepted each gift with gratitude, realizing that these were not just objects, but symbols of connection, respect, and the shared experiences of their time together. As the women prepared to leave, the rancher walked with them to the edge of the property. They paused for a final moment, looking out over the fields that had been their temporary home. The rancher felt a sense of pride and humility at the same time. He had opened his home to strangers, and in return, he had gained friendship, wisdom, and a reminder of the beauty of human connection. The women, too, seemed reflective, taking in the landscape and the quiet rhythm of the ranch, knowing that it had been a safe and welcoming place in their journey. The first woman spoke again, her voice gentle yet firm. "Your kindness will stay with us," she said. "It is rare to find people who offer help without expecting anything in return. You have shown us the value of generosity, patience, and respect, and we will remember it always." The rancher smiled, touched by her words. "And you have shown me something as well," he replied. "You have reminded me of resilience, courage, and the importance of sharing stories. Life is richer when we open ourselves to each other, and you have done that beautifully." With final smiles and waves, the women began walking along the dusty road, their figures gradually blending into the horizon. The rancher watched them go, feeling a mixture of melancholy and joy. Though their stay had been brief, The impact of their presence would remain with him forever. The ranch felt quiet once more, but it was a different kind of quiet one, filled with reflection, gratitude, and the memory of shared experiences. After the women had disappeared from view, the rancher returned to the house and went about his usual routines. He fed the animals, tended to the garden, and checked the fences. Yet his mind kept returning to the past few days. He thought about the stories the women had shared, the lessons he had learned, and the warmth they had brought into his home. It was clear to him that the unexpected visits had left an indelible mark, enriching not only his life but the way he viewed the world and the people in it. Throughout the day, he reflected on the nature of kindness and hospitality. Offering a place to rest, sharing a meal, and listening with an open heart had created bonds that transcended culture, distance, and circumstance. The rancher realized that these simple actions, small as they might seem, had the power to transform both giver and receiver. He felt a renewed commitment to living with generosity and openness, knowing that even a single act of kindness could ripple outward in ways unseen. Later in the afternoon, the rancher walked through the fields, the quiet expanse stretching around him. He noticed the small details he had learned to appreciate more fully during the women's stay. The patterns of the clouds, the song of the birds, the gentle sway of the wildflowers in the breeze. Each element seemed to carry a story, a reminder of the fleeting yet meaningful moments of connection that life could offer. He paused by the fence, leaning on the post and gazing across the land. The ranch, once simply a home and a livelihood, now felt like a place of shared experience, of lessons learned, and of memories that would linger long after the women had gone. As evening approached, the rancher prepared a simple meal for himself. Yet he did so with a sense of fulfillment rather than routine. He set the table carefully, remembering the ways the women had contributed and the gentle touches they had added to his life. Sitting down to eat, he reflected on the past few days, thinking about the courage it took for the women to travel alone, the patience they had shown, and the grace with which they had accepted his hospitality. Their visit had been more than a fleeting encounter. It had been a lesson in humanity, respect, and the quiet power of kindness. Night fell slowly over the ranch, the stars emerging one by one in the clear sky. The rancher stepped outside for a moment, feeling the cool breeze and listening to the gentle sounds of the land. He thought of the 4 women walking along the dusty road, continuing their journey, and he hoped that the lessons and kindness shared between them would travel with them as well. Though he could not know the future, he felt confident that this experience had created a lasting bond, a memory of generosity and friendship that would remain in all their hearts. Finally, he returned to his room, feeling a deep sense of peace and contentment. The ranch was quiet, the animals resting, and the land bathed in the silver light of the moon. He reflected on the journey of the past few days, realizing that what had begun as a simple offer of shelter had grown into a profound exchange of trust, respect, and human connection. The women had brought joy, wisdom, and warmth, and he had given them safety, food, and care. Yet the true gift was the bond that had been formed, unspoken but strong, between their hearts. As he lay down to sleep, the rancher felt a quiet gratitude. He knew that life often brought unexpected surprises, and that embracing them with an open heart could create moments of profound meaning. The ranch would return to its routine in the days ahead, but the memory of the 4 women, their stories, and the lessons they had shared would remain, a quiet and lasting reminder of the beauty of kindness, courage, and connection. And so, the rancher drifted off to sleep under the wide, starlit sky, comforted by the knowledge that a simple act of generosity could create ripples of goodness, and that the world, though vast and sometimes lonely, could always be touched by shared humanity, friendship, and the enduring warmth of trust.